Captain Zara had been flying through space for 3 years without seeing anything truly exciting. Her job was simple: map new star systems and report back to headquarters. Most days were boring, filled with endless reports and routine scans of empty space. She commanded a small crew of 12 on the exploration ship Stellar Wanderer, and honestly, she was getting tired of the same routine every single day. But today felt different somehow. As her ship approached the strange yellow star that the locals called Sol, her scanner started beeping like crazy. Something was wrong out there. Her navigation officer, a quiet guy named Kex, looked up from his console with worried eyes. "Captain, we're picking up a distress signal. It's coming from one of the gas giant's moons," he said. His voice tight with concern, Zara leaned forward in her command chair. This was the kind of thing that could get her in serious trouble. The rules were crystal clear: never interfere with civilizations that haven't discovered faster-than-light travel yet. Earth was one of those worlds. They were still babies when it came to space travel, barely managing to reach their own moon consistently. "What kind of signal?" she asked, though she already suspected she knew the answer. "Life support failure. Someone's trapped up there, and they don't have long." Zara stared at the main screen showing the blue and white marble that was Earth spinning. Peacefully in the distance, somewhere up there, a person was dying. A real person with hopes and dreams and people who loved them. The rules said to ignore it and fly away. The rules said it wasn't their problem. But Zara had never been good at following rules when they felt wrong. "Take us closer," she ordered. Her crew exchanged nervous glances. They all knew what this meant. Interfering with a pre-contact species could end their careers or worse. But none of them argued. They trusted their captain even when she was about to do something incredibly stupid. The research station looked like a tin can held together with wire and hope. It was orbiting the massive gas giant these humans called Jupiter, spinning slowly as it leaked precious air into the cold vacuum of space. Through her ship's powerful sensors, Zara could see one life form still aboard, weak but alive. "His oxygen levels are critical. Maybe 10 minutes left, if we're lucky," reported her medical officer. 10 minutes. Zara closed her eyes and made a decision that would change everything. "Prepare the transport beam. I'm going over there." "You can't be serious," Kex protested. "If headquarters finds out, then we better make sure they don't," Zara cut him off. She stood up, straightening her uniform. "Keep the ship ready for immediate departure. If this goes wrong, at least you can all claim I went crazy." The transport beam felt like being dissolved and rebuilt in the span of a heartbeat. One moment she was on her ship's clean, bright bridge, and the next she was standing in a cramped, dying space station filled with blinking red warning lights and the hiss of escaping air. She found him unconscious in what looked like a laboratory, slumped over a computer console. He was tall for a human, with dark hair and skin that had gone pale from lack of oxygen. But what struck her most was that, even while dying, his hands were still pressed against the keyboard, trying to save his work. Zara had studied dozens of species during her career, but she'd never seen dedication like this. This human was literally dying to protect some kind of research data. It reminded her of something she might do. She quickly checked his vital signs with her medical scanner. He was alive, but barely. Working fast, she attached a portable life support unit to his chest and activated her ship's transport system. The moment they materialized in her medical bay, chaos erupted. Her medical team rushed forward with equipment while Zara stepped back. Suddenly realizing the magnitude of what she'd just done, she'd brought an alien aboard her ship. It's not just any alien, a human from a restricted world. But then he opened his eyes. They were brown. Warm and intelligent despite his confusion. As he slowly sat up on the medical bed, looking around at technology that must have seemed like magic to him, he didn't scream or panic like she'd expected. Instead, he looked directly at her with those thoughtful eyes and said something in his language. Her universal translator kicked in a moment later. "Oh, thank you." 2 simple words, but they hit Zara harder than she'd expected. When was the last time someone had thanked her for anything? Her crew followed orders headquarters demanded. "Reports but nobody ever just said thank you anymore. You're safe now, she replied, and watched his eyes widen as he heard her words in perfect English. You're not human, he said, and it wasn't a question. His gaze took in her blue-tinged skin, her slightly longer limbs, the way her hair seemed to shimmer with its own light. No, I'm not. My name is Zara. I'm from ... Well, very far away. He nodded slowly, as if this was the most natural thing in the world. I'm David. I was studying Europa, Jupiter's moon. He found something amazing in the ice, but then... He gestured vaguely, still weak from his ordeal. Your station failed. You almost died, but you saved me. He looked around the medical bay again, taking in the advanced equipment with the eye of a scientist. This is incredible. Your technology is centuries ahead of ours. Most humans would have been terrified, or in denial.
David was fascinated.
Over the next few hours, as her medical team worked to fully restore his health, Zara found herself talking with him about everything from star navigation to the basic principles of faster-than-light travel. He asked intelligent questions and listened carefully to her answers. More importantly, he shared his own knowledge freely, explaining Earth's scientific discoveries and the research he'd been conducting. Zara realized that despite coming from a less advanced civilization, David understood the universe in ways that sometimes surprised her. What happens now? He asked during one of their conversations. They were alone in the medical bay, the lights dimmed for what his body clock thought was night. Zara had been dreading this question. Protocol demanded she wipe his memory and return him to his world, making it seem like he'd been rescued by another human ship. It would be clean, simple, and safe for everyone involved. I have to take you home, she said softly. And then she couldn't meet his eyes. Then you forget this ever happened. David was quiet for a long moment. That seems like a waste, he finally said. A waste? Think about what we could learn from each other. Your people, my people, we're both trying to understand the same universe. We just see it from different angles. Zara felt something twist in her chest. He was right, of course. In just a few hours of conversation, she'd learned more about creative problem-solving than in months of routine missions. But the rules existed for good reasons. Contact between advanced and developing civilizations rarely ended well for the less advanced species. It's not that simple, she tried to explain. Maybe it should be. That night, as David slept in the medical bay and her ship drifted through the dark space between worlds, Zara stood on her bridge staring at the stars. She'd saved one life, but now she faced an impossible choice. Follow the rules and lose something precious, or break everything she'd sworn to uphold for a chance at something she'd never experienced before. For the first time in her career, Captain Zara wasn't sure what the right choice was, and that scared her more than any space battle ever had. 3 days had passed since David should have been sent home. 3 days of Zara finding excuses to keep him aboard her ship. First, she told her crew he needed more medical observation. Then she claimed his Earth biology required special study to ensure safe transport. By the 3rd day, even her most loyal officers were giving her strange looks. David wasn't complaining. He spent his time exploring the ship with the excitement of a child in a candy store, though he was careful not to touch anything without permission. Zara found herself giving him personal tours during her off-duty hours, showing him how the navigation systems worked and explaining the basics of interstellar travel. This is amazing, David said as they stood in the ship's observation deck, watching stars streak past in beautiful colors. You can cross entire galaxies in weeks. My people would need thousands of years to travel these distances. Your people. We'll get there eventually, Zara replied, watching his face light up with wonder. Every species develops at their own pace. But imagine what we could accomplish together right now. Your technology, combined with human creativity. He trailed off, lost in thought. That was the problem. David's enthusiasm was infectious. Every conversation with him sparked new ideas in Zara's mind. He looked at their routine challenges from completely different angles, suggesting solutions that were simple but brilliant. Yesterday, he'd helped her engineering team solve a power distribution problem that had bothered them for months. Her crew was starting to notice too. At first, they'd been suspicious of the strange alien guest. But David had a way of making people feel comfortable. He asked genuine questions about their work, remembered personal details they shared, and never acted like he was better than anyone despite coming from a completely different world. The real test came during their daily briefing. Zara was reviewing mission reports when her communications officer, Lieutenant Kai, looked up with concern.
Captain.
We're receiving a priority message from command. Admiral Thorne wants a full status update within the hour. Zara's blood went cold. Admiral Thorne was her direct superior, a no-nonsense woman who followed regulations like they were sacred text. If she started asking detailed questions about the mission, David's presence would be impossible to hide. Understood? Prepare the standard report, Zara ordered, trying to keep her voice steady as her crew worked on compiling the information. Zara slipped away to find David. She discovered him in the ship's small library, reading through their database of galactic history with intense concentration. David, we need to talk, she said quietly. He looked up, immediately sensing her worry. What's wrong? My superiors are asking questions. If they find out about you, she sat down across from him, feeling the weight of her decision crushing down on her. I have to hide you. David closed the book he'd been reading. Or you could tell them the truth. The truth would end my career and probably get you locked away somewhere for the rest of your life. Advanced civilizations don't just adopt random people from primitive worlds. Primitive? David raised an eyebrow, but he was smiling slightly. Thanks a lot. Despite everything, Zara found herself smiling back. You know what I mean? I do. I understand the risk you're taking for me. David leaned forward, his expression growing serious. Why are you doing this, Zara? You barely know me. It was a fair question. Zara had been asking herself the same thing for 3 days. Because sending you back feels wrong. You have so much to offer, so much to learn. Wiping your memory and pretending this never happened would be like destroying a work of art. Is that really the only reason? Zara met his eyes and felt something flutter in her chest. No, it's not. Before she could say more, the ship's communication system crackled to life. Captain to the bridge immediately. Priority message incoming. Zara's heart raced as she hurried to the bridge with David following close behind. On the main screen, Admiral Thorne's stern face appeared, her gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. Captain Zara, I trust your mapping mission is proceeding smoothly? Yes, Admiral. All systems functioning normally. Good. I'm sending Commander Blake to conduct a routine inspection tomorrow. He'll review your logs and interview your crew too. Ensure everything is in order. The connection ended, leaving Zara staring at a blank screen. Commander Blake was known throughout the fleet as someone who could find a needle in a haystack. If David was anywhere on the ship during the inspection, Blake would discover him. I heard, David said quietly from behind her. I'll hide. Whatever you need me to do. Zara turned to face him, seeing the trust in his eyes. He was willing to risk everything based on nothing more than her word that this was necessary. When was the last time someone had shown her that kind of faith? My personal quarters, she said finally. There's a storage compartment behind the wall panel that doesn't show up on standard scans. It's not comfortable, but ... I don't need comfort. I need to keep you safe. The next 18 hours were the longest of Zara's life. She went through her normal routine while David remained hidden. But every casual question from Commander Blake felt like a trap. He was thorough, reviewing every log entry and interviewing each crew member individually. Your mission reports are very detailed, Captain, Blake noted as he scrolled through data on his tablet. Perhaps too detailed for a routine mapping assignment. Believe in being thorough, sir. Indeed. And your crew speaks very highly of you. Nice. They seem unusually satisfied for people who've been on such a long, boring mission. Zara's palms were sweating, but she kept her voice level. A happy crew is an efficient crew, Commander. The inspection continued for hours. Blake examined every system, every room, every storage compartment. When he finally approached Zara's personal quarters, her heart nearly stopped. Just a routine check, Captain. I'm sure you understand. Zara nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Blake scanned the room methodically, his instruments beeping softly as they detected various energy signatures. When he approached the wall panel, where David was hidden, Zara held her breath. The scanner beeped. Blake frowned and adjusted the settings. Another beep. Interesting. There seems to be some kind of interference here. Old wiring, Zara managed to say. This ship has a few quirks. Blake studied the readings for what felt like forever, then shrugged. These older vessels do have their peculiarities. When Commander Blake finally left the ship 6 hours later, Zara waited a full 30 minutes before releasing David from his hiding place. He emerged stiff and cramped but smiling. "How did you know the scanner wouldn't detect me?" he asked. "I didn't," Zara admitted. "I was hoping that compartment shielding would be enough." David stared at her. "You risked everything on hope?" "I risked everything on you being worth it." They stood there in her quarters, the weight of what had just happened settling between them. Zara had officially crossed a line she could never uncross. She'd lied to a superior officer, hidden evidence, and committed herself to a path that could only end in disaster. But looking at David's grateful smile, she realized she didn't regret it. For the first time in years, she felt truly alive. "Happens now?" David asked. "Now?" Zara moved to her viewport, gazing out at the endless stars. "And we figure out how to make this work because I'm not giving you up without a fight." David joined her at the window, standing close enough that she could feel his warmth. "You might be the bravest person I've ever met, or the most foolish, maybe both." As her ship continued its journey through the vast darkness of space, Zara realized that saving David's life had somehow saved her own. She'd found something worth fighting for, something worth risking everything to protect. The future was uncertain and probably dangerous, but for the first time in her life, she wasn't facing it alone. 2 months had passed since the inspection, and David had become part of the crew in ways Zara never expected. She'd created fake identification papers, listing him as a research specialist from a distant colony world called Kepler Prime. Lie was getting easier to tell, but also more dangerous with each passing day. David had thrown himself into learning everything about galactic civilization. He studied their languages, customs, and technology with the same passion he'd once applied to studying Europa's hidden oceans. But some things were harder to adapt to than others. "I still don't understand why everyone has to agree on everything." "Before we make a decision," David complained after sitting through his 3rd crew meeting that week, "on Earth, the captain gives orders and people follow them. Here you spend 2 hours discussing whether to change course by 3 degrees. Zara smiled as she watched him pace around her quarters, clearly frustrated. "We're not military-like. Your people's navies? We're explorers. Everyone's input matters because everyone brings different expertise. But it's so slow. While you're all debating the best approach, problems get worse. Sometimes, but we also make fewer mistakes, because we consider all angles." David stopped pacing and looked at her with those thoughtful brown eyes. "Is that why you saved me? Because you considered all angles and decided it was the right choice?" "No," Zara admitted. "Saving you was pure instinct. Everything since then has been me trying to justify that instinct with logic." The truth was, having David aboard had changed more than just her mission parameters. Her crew had started looking to him for creative solutions to technical problems. His outsider perspective helped them see things they'd been taking for granted for years. Just last week, he'd suggested a modification to their sensor array that increased efficiency by 15%, but success brought new problems. Word was spreading through the fleet about the innovative research happening aboard the Stellar Wanderer. Other captains were asking questions about Zara's mysterious new specialist. Headquarters wanted detailed reports about their recent discoveries. "Captain, we have a problem," Lieutenant Kai announced, as he entered Zara's ready room. "Admiral, Thorne is requesting a personal meeting with our research specialist. She wants him transferred to her flagship for a special project." Zara's blood turned to ice. When she's sending a transport ship next week, David is supposed to report directly to her for assignment to the Deep Space Research Division. After Kai left, Zara sat alone in her quarters, staring at the fake identification papers she'd created for David. The web of lies was finally catching up with them. There was no way David could fool Admiral Thorne in person. The woman was too smart, too experienced, and had access to records that would expose his true identity within hours. She found David in the ship's small gymnasium, working out on equipment designed for different alien physiology than his own. He'd adapted remarkably well, but she could see the subtle signs of stress in his movements. Living a lie was taking its toll on both of them. "We need to talk," she said quietly. David immediately stopped his exercise routine. Over the past 2 months, he'd learned to read her moods as well as she could read his. "Bad news? Admiral Thorne wants to meet you personally. She's transferring you to her ship next week." David was quiet for a long moment, toweling off the sweat from his workout. "That's it then? Game over?" "Not necessarily. We could run. Take the ship and head for the Outer Rim territories. There are places out there where nobody asks too many questions. Turn your entire crew into criminals. Zara, these people trust you. They follow you because they believe in what you're doing. You can't ask them to throw away their lives for me." He was right, of course. Her crew had families, careers, futures they'd worked years to build. She couldn't ask them to sacrifice everything for one human they'd known for 2 months. "There has to be another way," she said. But even as she spoke the words, she knew how hollow they sounded. David moved closer, reaching out to touch her arm gently. "Maybe it's time to accept that some things aren't meant to last forever. These 2 months with you, with all of you, have been the best of my life. I've learned things I never imagined possible, seen wonders beyond my wildest dreams. That's more than most people get in a lifetime. But what about us?" The words slipped out before Zara could stop them. David's expression softened. "What about us? You're an alien starship captain from an advanced civilization. I'm a human scientist, from a world that's barely figured out how to reach its own moon. We're from different species, different worlds, different levels of technological development. What future could we possibly have together?" "I don't know," Zara admitted. "But I know I don't want to find out what life feels like without you in it. And I know that keeping me here will destroy everything you've worked for. Your career, your crew's trust, maybe even their lives if we get caught." That night, Zara couldn't sleep. She wandered the ship's corridors, checking systems that didn't need checking, reviewing reports she'd already read 3 times. In the observation deck, she found David staring out at the stars. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked, joining him at the large viewport. "I keep thinking about Earth. My colleagues probably think I died in that station accident. There might even have been a memorial service. Strange to think about people mourning you while you're still alive. Do you regret it, coming with me instead of going home?" David was quiet for so long that Zara thought he wasn't going to answer. Finally spoke. His voice was soft but certain. "Never, not for a single second." He turned to look at her, and in his eyes, she saw the same mixture of love and sadness that was tearing her apart. "But that doesn't make this any easier. What if we told them the truth? About how we met, about what you've contributed to our research? Maybe they'd make an exception." "Zara, you know better than that. Your people have rules about contact with primitive civilizations for good reasons. Throughout galactic history, when advanced species interfere with developing worlds, it rarely ends well for the less advanced culture. But you're different. You've adapted, contributed, proven yourself valuable. To your crew, yes, but to your government? I'm a security risk, a walking violation of their most important laws. At best, they'd lock me away on some research station for the rest of my life. At worst, ... He didn't finish the sentence. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars drift past. Each point of light represented countless worlds, billions of lives, infinite possibilities. But for all the vastness of the universe, Zara felt like their options were shrinking to nothing. "There's something else," David said finally. "Lieutenant. Kai has been asking subtle questions about my background. I think he suspects something." Zara's heart sank. Kai was loyal, but he was also ambitious. If he discovered David's true identity and reported it, he'd probably be rewarded with a promotion. She couldn't blame him for that, but it meant time was running out even faster than she'd feared. "How long do you think we have?" she asked. Days, maybe a week if we're lucky. As they prepared to face what might be their last few days together, Zara realized that falling in love with David had been the easiest thing she'd ever done. Learning to let him go was going to be the hardest. The moment Zara saw Admiral Morvain's ship approaching, she knew their secret was over. Morvain wasn't just any admiral, he was her former mentor. The man who'd taught her everything about space exploration and leadership. He was also famous throughout the fleet for his ability to detect lies and uncover hidden truths. Captain Admiral Morvain is requesting permission to board, Lieutenant Kai announced, his voice unusually tense. Even he seemed to sense that something big was about to happen. Permission granted, Zara replied, trying to keep her voice steady. She turned to David, who was standing beside her on the bridge. This is it. He'll figure out who you are within hours. David nodded calmly, though she could see the worry in his eyes. What do you want me to do? Nothing. Let me handle this. Zara straightened her uniform and prepared to face the man who'd once been like a father to her. Admiral. Morvain hadn't changed much in the 3 years since Zara had seen him last. His silver hair was perhaps a bit grayer, and there were new lines around his eyes. But he still carried himself with the same commanding presence that had once intimidated young officers across the galaxy. Captain Zara, he said formally, as he stepped onto her bridge. I trust you're well, Admiral. Welcome aboard the Stellar Wanderer. Morvain's sharp eyes swept the bridge, taking in every detail. When his gaze landed on David, it lingered for just a moment longer than necessary. And you must be the research specialist I've heard so much about. David, isn't it? Yes, sir, David replied, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting. It's an honor to meet you, Admiral. Morvain shook his hand, and Zara saw the older man's eyebrows rise slightly. Clearly, something about David's handshake had caught his attention. Humans had different bone density and muscle structure than most galactic species. Walk with me, Captain, the Admiral said. I'd like to see your ship. For the next 2 hours? Morvain conducted what seemed like a casual tour, but was clearly a thorough investigation. He asked innocent-sounding questions about David's background, recent discoveries, and the crew's daily routines. Each question felt like a trap to Zara, who found herself giving carefully rehearsed answers. But David was the real problem. Despite months of practice, he still made small mistakes that someone as experienced as Morvain would notice. He held his utensils differently during the meal they shared in the captain's mess. He asked questions about galactic history that someone from Kepler Prime should have known. Most damaging of all, he showed genuine amazement at technologies that should have been familiar to any Coalition citizen. Your research specialist is quite remarkable, Morvain commented as they walked through the ship's corridors. His perspectives on stellar phenomena are refreshingly unique. He's very talented, Zara agreed, her heart racing. Indeed. In fact, his insights remind me of first contact reports I've read. The way someone from a completely different scientific tradition might approach our problems. Zara felt her stomach drop. Morvain knew. Maybe he'd known from the moment he stepped aboard. That evening, the Admiral requested a private meeting with both Zara and David in her ready room. As they sat across from him, Zara could see the disappointment in his eyes. How long have you been harboring an unauthorized alien aboard this vessel? He asked quietly. The question hung in the air like a physical weight. Zara looked at David, who gave her a small nod of encouragement. 3 months, sir, she admitted. And you, Morvain, turned to David. I assume you're not actually from Kepler Prime? No, sir, from Earth. Captain Zara saved my life when my research station failed. Morvain leaned back in his chair, studying them both. Do you have any idea what you've done? The regulations you violated? The precedents you've set? I know I've broken the law, Zara said. But David has proven himself valuable to our mission. His contributions have advanced our research in ways that's not the point, Morvain interrupted. The point is that you've compromised the security of this ship, falsified official records, and violated the most fundamental law governing contact with pre-space civilizations. The consequences for this are severe. David spoke up. Admiral Captain Zara was only trying to save my life. Everything that happened after that was my choice. If someone needs to be punished, it should be me. Young man, you don't understand the situation you're in. You're from a restricted world. By galactic law, You shouldn't even exist as far as we're concerned. But I do exist, David said firmly. I've spent 3 months proving that contact between our species doesn't have to be harmful. I've learned. Your ways contributed to your research and formed genuine friendships with your people. Isn't that worth something? Morvain was quiet for a long moment. What you've accomplished is remarkable, I'll grant you that, but the law exists for good reasons. Throughout galactic history, when advanced civilizations interfere with developing worlds, it usually leads to the destruction of the less advanced culture. So what happens now? Zara asked, though she dreaded the answer. Now I have to report this to Coalition Command. There will be a formal tribunal, Captain Zara. You'll face charges of violating first contact protocols, falsifying records, and compromising ship security. The minimum sentence is dismissal from service and exile to a frontier world. Zara felt the blood drain from her face. Exile meant she'd never see her family again. Never serve on another starship. Never explore the galaxy she loved so much. And David will be transferred to a secure research facility for indefinite study, Morvain continued. It's not as harsh as it sounds. He'll be treated well and allowed to continue his research, but he'll never be free to leave. That's a prison sentence, David said flatly. It's the best outcome I can arrange under the circumstances. That night, Zara and David sat together in her quarters, knowing it might be their last night of freedom. The tribunal would convene in 3 days, and after that, their fate would be sealed. I'm sorry, Zara said quietly. I should have sent you home that first day. None of this would have happened if I'd followed protocol. Don't, David replied firmly. Don't you dare apologize for giving me the best 3 months of my life. I've seen wonders I never dreamed possible, learned things that have expanded my understanding of the universe, and fallen in love with someone I never thought I'd meet. Fallen in love? Zara looked at him in surprise. David smiled sadly. Did you think it was just friendship? Zara, you're the most incredible person I've ever met. You risked everything to save a stranger, then risked even more to protect him. How could I not fall in love with you? I love you too, she whispered. The words feeling both wonderful and heartbreaking, they held each other through the night, knowing that in 3 days they'd be separated forever. But even facing the worst possible outcome, neither of them regretted the choices that had brought them together. Some things they both realized were worth any price. 6 months had passed since the tribunal that changed everything. Zara stared out the window of her small apartment on Frontier Station 7, watching cargo ships drift past like metal clouds against the starfield. Her exile had been swift. An absolute stripped of her captain's rank, banned from ever commanding a starship again, and sentenced to live on this remote outpost at the edge of known space. But somehow she wasn't miserable. The work here was different from commanding. A starship, but it was still meaningful. She helped coordinate supply runs to distant colonies, managed communications between isolated settlements, and occasionally got to analyze new star charts from deep space explorers. It wasn't the life she'd planned, but it was a life with purpose. What made it bearable was the coded messages she received through back channels from David. He was living on Research Station Delta, supposedly under strict supervision while contributing to various scientific projects. But his messages, hidden in routine data transmissions and scientific reports, told a different story. David wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. His unique perspective on galactic science had made him something of a legend among researchers. The solutions he proposed to complex problems were so innovative that word was spreading throughout the scientific community. More importantly, his success was starting to change minds about the potential benefits of controlled contact with developing civilizations. Captain Zara. The voice belonged to Communications Officer Riley, one of the few people on the station, who still used her old rank. You have an incoming priority message? It's marked classified. Zara's heart skipped. Classified messages were rare on a frontier station. She hurried to the communications center, wondering if David was in trouble, or if her exile was about to get worse. The message was from Admiral Morvain. His expression on the screen was unreadable. Zara, I need you to report to Coalition headquarters immediately. There's been a development in your case that requires your immediate attention. Transport ship will arrive tomorrow to bring you back to the core systems. The message ended. Without explanation, leaving Zara staring at a blank screen. After 6 months of silence from Coalition Command, why would they suddenly want to see her? Had David's situation changed? Had she somehow violated the terms of her exile without knowing it? The journey back to Coalition headquarters took 3 days, during which Zara imagined every possible scenario. None of them were good. By the time she arrived at the massive space station that served as the government's central hub, she was prepared for the worst. Admiral Morvain met her at the docking bay personally, which was unusual for someone of his rank. His expression was serious, but there was something else there, something that might have been cautious optimism. "Walk with me," said simply. They moved through the station's pristine corridors in silence, until they reached a conference room Zara had never seen before. Inside, she was surprised to find a group of high-ranking officials she recognized. From news broadcasts, members of the Coalition Council, the body that made policy for the entire galactic government. "Please sit," Counselor Vega said, gesturing to an empty chair. She was an elderly woman known for her progressive views on interspecies relations. "We have much to discuss. Am I in more trouble?" Zara asked, unable to hide her anxiety. "Quite the opposite," Counselor Vega replied with a slight smile. "Tell me, what do you know about the current crisis in the Andromeda sector?" Zara frowned. "Only what I've heard on the news feeds. Some kind of energy phenomenon that's threatening both Coalition worlds and several pre-contact civilizations. The reports are saying it could affect millions of lives. Billions, actually," Admiral Morvain corrected. "And our best scientists have been working on the problem for months without success. Traditional approaches aren't working because this phenomenon operates on principles we don't fully understand." "I'm not sure what this has to do with me," Zara said carefully. Counselor Vega leaned forward. "It has everything to do with your friend David. His analysis of the crisis, combining human scientific methodology with our advanced technology, has produced the first viable solution we've seen. But implementing his plan requires unprecedented cooperation between our forces and several pre-contact species, including Earth." Zara's breath caught. Earth is involved. "The phenomenon will reach the Sol system within 2 years. If we don't act, Earth will be destroyed along with dozens of other worlds. David's plan could save them all, but it requires exactly the kind of controlled first contact that your case has made us reconsider." Admiral Morvain activated a holographic display showing star charts and energy readings. "For decades, our policy has been strict non-interference with developing civilizations. But your relationship with David has proven that under the right circumstances, contact can be beneficial for both species. We're proposing something revolutionary," Counselor Vega continued. "A new department within Coalition Command dedicated to managed first contact scenarios. We need someone to lead this department, someone who understands both the risks and the potential benefits of contact with pre-space civilizations." Zara stared at them in disbelief. "You want me to command this new department? We want you to work with David to establish new protocols for interspecies cooperation. Your personal experience makes you uniquely qualified for this role. But I'm exiled. I broke the law. I violated every regulation about you, saved a life," Admiral Morvain interrupted. "And in doing so, you may have saved billions more. Sometimes breaking the rules is exactly what the situation requires." An hour later, Zara found herself aboard a transport ship heading for Research Station Delta. Her exile was over. Her rank restored, and she'd been given command of the most important new initiative in Coalition history. But none of that mattered. As much as the fact that she was about to see David again, she found him in the station's main laboratory, bent over a complex array of instruments and displays. He'd grown a beard during their separation, and there were new lines around his eyes, from months of intensive work. But when he looked up and saw her standing in the doorway, his face lit up with the same warm smile that had captured her heart months ago. "Zara." He stood slowly, as if he couldn't quite believe she was real. Double quotes, "Hello, David." They stood looking at each other across the laboratory, 6 months of separation and uncertainty hanging between them, like a bridge they weren't sure they could cross. "I heard about your promotion," David said finally. "Director of Interspecies Relations. That's..." Quite a step up from exile. I heard you've been busy saving the galaxy, just doing my job. He moved closer, and Zara could see the hope and uncertainty in his eyes that mirrored her own feelings. So what happens now? We work together to establish new protocols. For first contact, we'll be traveling to Earth as part of the advanced team to prepare humanity for official contact with the Coalition. Together, if you want to? I know the past 6 months have been difficult. I wouldn't blame you if David crossed the remaining distance between them and pulled her into his arms, cutting off her words with a kiss that spoke of months of longing and the joy of reunion. I've been dreaming of this moment since the day they took me away, he whispered against her ear, as they held each other in the quiet laboratory, surrounded by the instruments that had helped save countless worlds. Zara realized that their love story had become something much bigger than either of them had imagined. They'd started as two people from different worlds who found each other by accident. Now they were partners in reshaping how the galaxy approached the delicate process of bringing new civilizations into the cosmic community. Their ship, the Bridge of Worlds, launched 3 months later, with Zara as captain and David as chief science officer. Together, they would return to Earth as humanity's first official contact with galactic civilization, proving that love could indeed bridge any distance, overcome any obstacle, and change the course of history itself.